First of all, I was raised conservative Catholic. I was very naive in my 20s and hadn't been around any vice to speak of. The sports center was, there were a number of things going on in there, but I found out later that when an officer walked in, somebody would ring a bell under the counter and all the bad stuff would stop. I did notice that while I was in there a number of times that the phone was ringing and nobody would answer it while I was there.
What's going on, guys? Dan Wise, Wise Media Studios. We're back with another episode. Today we got two fun guests with us. We've got Wachter Kusske and Derek Wachter with us, both authors of complete different genres. So welcome, gentlemen. How are you guys doing?
Thank you. Great.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
And first, I want to set the example. Every guest that walks in the door should be so nice as Wachter as to bring money with them. Wachter donated today $20 to Wise Media Studios, and we are going to pay it forward to the homeless and addictive episodes that we do. So thank you very much for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. So, gentlemen, we met through Yakima Paranormal, which you guys are a part of that group, fun group. And let's start over here with Derek a little bit. So, Derek, tell us a little bit. You're more of the fiction, psych, horror, suspense, thrillers, and Wachter, you are a more of true crime.
I would say so, yeah, historical fiction.
Historical fiction. So, Derek, tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of how you got into what you do, and also let people know the best way they can check out your book, your works, and your writing, your content, all that fun stuff.
Well, sure. My name is Derek Wachter. I am a Yakima native all my life. Lived in Milwaukee, Wisconsin for about 3 years for school, and then came back and been living here ever since. It's about 10 years ago. I really got into writing more or less as something I just enjoyed doing. So did a lot of schooling growing up and in my younger adult years as well. So one of the things I really enjoyed doing was like English classes and writing papers and doing the research and everything like that. So it wasn't really too hard for me to be a writer. I got to a point where I think when it comes to writing, I wanted to do things for myself. I wanted to write for myself. So when you write in school, you have to write a certain way. You have to follow like an APA format. You have to follow an MLA format. In my work, you have to write a certain way in order for like the judges or the attorneys to see what you're writing in your documents. I love writing, but I hate writing, being told what to write,
right.
Being told what to do. So I ventured out into kind of writing my own stories.
Well, a question on that. So did you find like the schooling kind of helped you design going forward?
That's exactly it. And it kind of got me into the idea of how I needed to write. And when I started writing for myself, it was a struggle at first because I've never written a book before, never considered myself an author or anything like that, even though I enjoyed writing. So my first couple books were a little rough, and I didn't know the process and everything. And now that I'm on book 6 in the books that I've written now, the process is starting to flow a little better. I know what I want to write, how I want to write it, the reason why I'm writing. I want to say it's progress, but at the same time, I'm just really enjoying what I'm doing. I'm having a good time writing the way that I do, but like you said, yeah, that schooling and all that education and background in that sense did really prepare me for kind of where I'm writing today.
So people out there watching potentially that are like, I don't need to go through all this. I'm just going to start writing books. I mean, they might get lucky, but it probably does build a better format if you kind of learn the process first, right?
Right. It's important to learn the process, I think, in anything you do, but especially when it comes to writing, because there's so many factors that go into writing. It's not all just about putting words on paper or anything. It's about, like Vic does a lot of research, the background and everything like that. Vic does a lot more than I do.
I imagine his requires more research because his is based on a lot of like the events that have actually took place and happened.
That's right.
Where yours is I can create these crazy horror stories in my head.
Right. Yeah. So like what Vic would write, like for instance, the tunnels that we were talking about a while back. Vic might write like the nonfiction part of that and throw in a little bit of fiction to get the story flowing a little bit. Me, on the other hand, I'll look at a situation like that and say, well, what kind of monster can I put in the tunnels, and why would I have somebody go in there, and how can I draw like a dialogue between the antagonist and the protagonist, and how do I keep the protagonist in there long enough to keep the story drawn out? It's I feel like my writing is a little bit mindless to that sense, as far as not doing all the research that I need to do that Vic does for his books. Like Vic does a lot of research.
Yeah, but some of that stuff that you do with characters is something that I need to work on more, and present in my books too. That's part of writing and entertaining, basically.
Right, and writing it's you learn as you go.
Has Victor ever wrote, like, have you seen any of his stories that you've spun off into some, like, the beat cops walking down Yakima in 19 whatever, and all of a sudden, like, the zombie jumps out?
Sure. Or like spaceship comes down,
Yeah.
the beam comes up. Yeah,
So-
that's where my mind goes.
Okay.
That's how, yeah.
So you're working on your books. You brought me a book today. You said this is a book for me to check out. This is There Are No Truths, Only Perceptions.
Right.
That's a really, we'll have to, I don't know if you can see that cover, Francis, but that's a nightmare cover there.
Yeah.
Now, is this a book of one story, or is this like multiple stories in the
That
book?
is a short novella story.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's one story.
Right.
Okay.
Right. That took me 3 months.
3 months.
3 months to write.
So from start to finish, from writing to the book being ready to go sell, how long does that take? This book?
A book like that, yeah, I'd say I'd say maybe like 5 months. You
Man.
get the months 1 through 3, you get it all written down and everything. 4 through 5 is kind of like that proofreading process, going through the publisher, having ghost readers read it and say, oh, this makes sense, this sounds good. And then if they say, no, this looks like crap, I don't like this, then going back over and then reviewing it and see what needs to be changed to make it better.
I imagine both of you have to really take criticism well, right? Because you might really think what you have is like, this is gold, but then you let other people review it, and if you get enough feedback and it's like, it's gold plated. Have you guys ever run into that?
Oh yeah, I like to hear reviews, even negative reviews, because it makes me a better writer. They may be right in what they're talking about.
And so Victor, you gave me a book last time you were here, Criminal Prosecutor, The Fight for Yakima, inspired by true events. Now this book, and you can see this, Francis?
Yeah.
Now this book is filled with several short stories, right? Or events.
Right. Actually, there's 2 storylines there. There's a homicide of a woman out in Glebe that went on forever before it was finally adjudicated. And then the other part of the story is the adventures of a downtown foot patrolman.
Being you.
Yeah, sort of.
Okay, sort of. Okay. So yours is filled mostly with nonfiction, sprinkled with a little fiction?
I would say so, yeah. There are tunnels under Yakima, but I might have expanded some of that stuff in my writing.
In your writing. And kind of tell us your background a little bit, because that's pretty interesting. You and I, the three of us, we met in here a couple weeks ago, and just listening to your stories, it's like this guy should just be, even on an audio. Not everybody can pull off audio only podcast, but I think we could just let the guy. He could sit in front of a microphone and just talk.
Absolutely.
And the money would probably start kind of sprinkling over our heads. So make it rain some more.
Right. Yeah.
So tell us your background. How did you get into this? What's your background?
Well, I guess maybe starting in about 1972, I'd been through the police academy. I was hired by the Yakima Police Department, and my first job was downtown foot patrol officer. I'd completed just about 4 years of college, and there was a recession over in Seattle, and ended up having to look for work. So it started out as just kind of a job to earn some money and maybe get back to school, and it turned into a career. The first 8 years of my work was walking the beat downtown by myself, basically. On the weekends, there would sometimes be a reserve officer to go with me. And in and out of all of the bars and making sure everybody was happy, and that's basically what I did.
And now, because we're going to be doing a lot of stuff with Sports Center, which, between the ghost hunting and all that stuff, you were a beat cop back then when upstairs was something different.
That's
or
right.
the whole bar was something different.
That's right.
So tell us what you remember about Sports Center, because that's some local history.
Well, let me give you a little background on myself. First of all, I was raised conservative Catholic. I was very naive in my 20s and hadn't been around any vice to speak of. The Sports Center was, there were a number of things going on in there, but I found out later that when an officer walked in, somebody would ring a bell under the counter and all the bad stuff would stop. I did notice that while I was in there a number of times that the phone was ringing and nobody would answer it while I was there. So I think probably that there might have been a little bookmaking going on at the time.
A little bit?
Yeah, a little. There were a number of vice crimes that were, how should I say, tolerated during that time. I know I mentioned some of these things to my sergeant and other people about what I was seeing, and nobody seemed to be too interested in taking care of it.
Do you think it's one of those things where once in a while there might be an envelope passed off to kind of like keep the peace?
That was a possibility, I suppose, but I never did see anything like that.
Okay.
Of course, I was a beat cop, and I was the lowest of the low as far as law enforcement is concerned.
How did it go from beat cop in the 70s to writing books in 2000s?
Well, the second book kind of follows a problem that law enforcement had where people would commit a crime and then disappear into Mexico. And one of my hobbies was sailing. I learned to sail, and I enjoyed it. And so I went down to Mexico and bought a sailboat and sailed the Sea of Cortez for 5 winters.
Wow.
Exploring that area. I followed John Steinbeck's book, The Log from the Sea of Cortez, which he wrote, I think, in 1940.
You mean you follow the coordinates?
Some of it, yeah.
Oh, how
and
cool.
went into some of the bays and areas and met some of the people. And after I finished that and came home, then I started writing. And I wanted to include exploring the Sea of Cortez in a novel, too, if I could. So that was the second book, basically. We're after a bad guy down there. The third book is we come back to Yakima, and we go back into the tunnels again. There's a burglary at a bank, and there's problems at the border, which we're experiencing right now, where I have a situation where some advice on how to handle some of that. And then finally, the fourth book that I've just finished writing is about organized crime and arson fires in the 1970s and 80s here in Yakima.
So you guys definitely, is it like how I like making podcasts because it's not necessarily about, well, it's definitely not about the money, but I like doing it because it kind of, it's, I enjoy it. When I do it, I feel recharged, things like that. When you guys are writing your books, when it's completed, is there like a major sense of accomplishment?
It is, for me, definitely.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty satisfying.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And how long does that high last before you're like, I got to write another book because it's wearing off?
For me, maybe a few days.
Oh, it's up and down with me. If you take a look at my first book there in chapter 28, you'll see a guy by the name of Rocky Stone. And Rocky was a bouncer at the Alaska Corral, a topless joint. And he was one of the guys, since I was walking by myself, he was somebody I thought maybe might jump in and help me out, especially if I was on the bottom. And I took some time and I found Rocky. And if you look at the back of the book now, and the very last review, you'll see a review from Rocky.
Without incriminating myself, I would say that when Officer Kusske writes as close to how things were back then on the streets anyone could explain, his book is good because it understood what was really happening. Hopefully, my friends will read this because it's a good book. Rocky Stone, retired bouncer, the Alaska Corral. So that was him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Man, are there still a lot of people around here that were back then, like business owners, other beat cops?
Yeah, there's a fair amount of people still here that remember those days. And
How did you guys meet?
well, I knew Derek's mom a long time ago. When I was working detectives, she worked in the prosecutor's office, and then I met Derek through his mom.
So you knew him when he was younger then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's.
I remember going to your baseball games.
Okay, there you go. Yeah.
Wow.
So little league. So
how old were you roughly?
12 years old around that time.
Oh, how cool.
I'd say, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you started writing, were you already writing?
I didn't do much writing. The first writing I did was when I was sailing. There was a newspaper on the Baja called the Gringo Gazette, and I offered to write an article for it, and they accepted. I got 10 cents a word for that one.
10 cents a word.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That is pretty cool. I'd love to get 10 cents a word.
I'd love to get anything per word.
Yeah. So I started writing back in 2019. My first book was 60 Suntides Boulevard. It was a haunted house horror story, and then it progressed from there to Cabin at the End of Herrick Road, which is a Sasquatch horror story stuck in kind of the middle of nowhere, isolated, cabin snowed in. The next book is that one, the novella solipsism. It's a psychological condition, kind of your belief that you're the only thing that exists in this world. Everything else around you is just kind of a manifestation of your own mind and what you make it out to be. Like, for instance, like if it's just me here, like in my mind, I'm putting Vic here, I'm putting you here, I'm putting the microphones and the lights, and everything here is just all manifested in my mind. So the topic of solipsism was a really easy kind of thing to write on.
I can almost picture like
hallucinations, delusions.
I can almost picture if that were a movie where, let's say, we're all sitting here right now, and then finally jumps to the perspective of like the viewer seeing what's really in the room, and you're just sitting like a white void.
So,
Right.
Derek, is that a true mental illness, or what is it?
I would consider it a mental illness. It's not necessarily narcissism by all means, but it's I would think it's pretty close to that. It's like along the lines. It's like the stepchild to narcissism, I would say, because it's just you, and everything else around you doesn't matter. Everything else around you is just what you make it out to be.
Okay.
So it's an interesting concept, but that was a fun write. I enjoyed writing that one. Then Black Flags was kind of the pirate book that I wrote. I kind of branched away from horror for a little bit, wrote a pirate adventure story, went right back to horror, and wrote a book called Crete, modern day horror book. Uses the Minotaur monster as the antagonist.
Is it over there?
It is, yeah. It's that one right there. And then just recently, in fact, it's actually the first time I brought this book out in public. I just got it a week and a half ago. Dark Side of the Moon. That was a fun write. I really wanted to kind of get into something science fiction, alien-ish kind of stuff. So spent, I'd say, 9 months writing this one, going through the process of producing or publishing and proofreading and all that stuff.
So when you guys are writing the books, like I remember the movie Misery. We've probably all seen the movie Misery. Kathy Bates, amazing role, Kathy Bates. You would see, is writer's block a real thing?
Oh, yes.
And is it like eating you up inside? You're like, fuck.
I have one book. I don't know about you, Vic, but I have one book right now that I got to about chapter 7, and I said, this is crap so far. Like, I am just, like, dribbling. Like, just, it's not coming together. And I shelved it. And it's been about 1.5 years, and I intend to get back to it, maybe proofread the first 7 chapters, and then maybe rework something, make it a little bit more interesting. But I pumped out maybe 150 pages, Word document pages, and I'm just like, this book is not going anywhere. I'm not going to put my name to this. So I need to revisit that one. Writer's block, to me, is it can be. It could be pretty effective.
I haven't had it happen. I have starts and stops. I get so far in research, and I think, okay, I can fill in the rest. But then some more research comes in, and
Yeah, I was gonna.
wait for things to get back.
That's the difference. Like that.
That's a benefit. I would imagine.
That's a good benefit for Vic, because Vic's stuff, he gets real testimony. He gets the real history of what's going on. Me, it's all in my mind, and it's all like I'm trying to put this out there, and I want to tell a story, and I want to make it sound good, but like we were talking about, writer's block happens.
And when the ideas would come to you that you're going to write, is it almost like I got to go write this right now? Because I imagine you're trying to get this entire thought into however many pages, and if you start to forget a piece, it's like, oh man, where was I going with this?
Take notes.
I keep a pen and paper close by all the time.
Yep, I do too.
So I imagine neither one of you have had to write a book with a typewriter.
No.
I think it'd be super cool for one of you guys to write a book on a typewriter and see what the old guys had, not the old guys, but the older back in the day had to go through.
Oh, I know.
Imagine ripping it out, crumble it up. You can't just delete it. Yeah,
No,
that's a lot.
no, that's a lot.
Because they would write whole books like that.
Yeah, I know.
I always think of when it comes to typewriters, The Shining, and Jack Nicholson's
Yes.
character.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just I couldn't imagine like just
Well, I don't know what I'd do without Word.
I don't either.
You know, my manuscripts are all like 12 font Times New Roman double spaced.
So you can see it. Yeah.
That's the industry standard.
Right.
And
You know, and what's crazy is you guys are like, I couldn't imagine a day without like Word. 10, 15 years from now, the writers are going to be going, I couldn't imagine if I had to write a book on Word. You know?
I think there are writers out there that are talking.
Oh, definitely.
And just talking into like microphone like we do, and it just pops it up right on the screen.
Before you know it, AI is going to be writing the books for you guys.
oh, you know what? Before I publish through Kindle, I have to check a box that says that none of my work is AI.
I do too.
Do you? Good.
Yep.
You know, I think they're using the honor system there because AI's getting so good. It's going to get scary out there for writers, for reporters. That are you guys afraid of AI at all?
How do you want to answer that, Vic?
I don't know. I don't know. I hear the good and bad about it. You know, it's
Right.
like anything; it needs to be controlled.
Yeah, I agree. I think we have come so far as technology and science and everything like that goes, and I just worry there's going to come a day. I don't want to go like 1980s Terminator here kind of thing, kind of scenario, but
I do.
I feel like there's going to come a day where the machines are going to outwit man. I just feel like it's going to happen. And it might not happen in my lifetime, but
So you have to trust that whoever's creating the commands in AI, that they're going to have some kind of create a pathogen. Sorry, not allowed to do this. But as soon as somebody figures out how to hack that. Anyway, that's a whole nother. So with your guys' books, where can people pick up your books at? I know you guys do a lot of like private signings and stuff, but are they online on your websites?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. So I've got a website, and you can go on to Amazon. Audiobooks are available on ACX. There's some local places around town here, like the Sundance Espresso out in Sela has a couple books. Gerald's up in Ellensburg has a few books. Encore Books over by Davis High School, they have some books. So there's local shops around.
Inklings also at
Inklings, yeah.
56th and some of you.
They sell both of your books there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, they sell his. They don't sell mine.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Vic's got to put the word in, I think.
Yeah.
probably you gotta work something for
Yeah.
it.
And my books are on Amazon also. And I have a website. It's www.10ten-8 publishing.net.
So when it comes to doing books, let's talk about some of the. Let's say we have a new author out there, or somebody that wants to get into this. What are some of the hurdles that you guys came across that you wish you could tell the younger you to avoid?
First thing that comes to my mind is don't trust publishers. Yeah, when I first published my first book, 60 Suntides Boulevard, I thought the publisher would do everything as far as like editing and proofreading and all that stuff. So went through the publisher, they published it, didn't do a very good job of proofreading. So I had to actually go back and revisit and go through that process again. So I ended up wasting a lot of time and a lot of money going through a publisher when I could just self-publish myself, skip all that process, edit myself, proofread myself, have others ghost read. Basically, is they read your work and they determine, yeah, this looks good, or like, no, this part doesn't make sense. You got to explain this a little bit better. Publishers didn't do that for me, and I wasted a lot of money on that.
There's a couple types of publishers, and it's difficult picking them apart. There's the traditional publisher, which takes care of everything, like Derek was hoping, and then there's a hybrid publisher. They will charge you money right off the bat to get your book published, and they may or may not do a good job with it. I think the last time I read, over 40% of the books nowadays being published are being self-published through places like Kindle and Ingram.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble.
Yeah.
So when you say self-published, there's still a fee associated to this, right?
No?
So so for like, we'll use this book right here because this is one of your smaller books. How many pages is this? Is
Oh,
let's see.
140, 120.
Not even. Oh yeah, about that, about 120 pages.
Yeah.
So what did it cost to publish this book, if you can share that?
So the cost to publish that book, the only cost to me is when I purchase them through for author copies, like when I'm going to shows or book signings or conventions. For that book specifically, I have to pay about $2.50 for the author fee, and they go regular price. I think it's $6-7. You can set your prices to these.
Is that a upfront fee, or is that when the book sells they take a percentage?
That's when the book sells.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
So you pay nothing out of pocket up
Not
front.
paying out of pocket. No.
And if you were to pay out of pocket up front, would you get a better deal?
I don't know if it's an option.
Okay.
I've never seen Amazon
no.
ever offer.
Well, some of the things that happen before you publish is it needs to be proofread.
You have to pay for that.
You can, and it can be expensive too.
Yeah.
I've got friends that help me out in that regard.
Yep, I got friends.
So I guess the last thing you want to do is have a book where it's like, hey man, you misspelled every word.
Right.
Right.
Not only that, but grammar and content and that type of thing. Whether or not the story flows, and there's a lot to it. The other thing that you need to watch out for or change before it gets published is it needs to be formatted. In other words, it needs to be reduced down to a size that'll fit into those
Okay.
books.
I think this is where AI could probably have a lot of help because
Yeah.
you can
true.
upload something
Right.
like this to AI and say proofread, and it's going to do a lot of the basics for
Yeah.
sure.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. Then once it's formatted, then it just automatically gets sent up to the publisher. We have to put together a cover and a spine and a back.
Do you hire somebody for your? I obviously I know you're probably hiring somebody to do the artwork, but
Yes.
are you giving them what you want, or
Yeah.
do they give you like different ideas? You're like, okay, I like this. Let's kind of switch this.
Well, on this one here, I found the photograph online and bought it,
Okay.
and then I turned it over to a technician for a couple $100, and she turned it into a book cover and did the spine and the back also.
Are you guys positive cash flow on selling books? Because I've met a lot of people that are like, yeah, I've made a couple $1,000s over like the last like 10 years total, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is something that I was going to also mention too, is that when you're done writing the book and you publish it, the work doesn't end there. And what I mean by that is you go to book signings, you go to the conventions. And for me, it's a lot easier because I can find horror conventions, nonfiction or fictional conventions, conventions that are themed towards my books, like the Bigfoot conventions for Sasquatch stuff, pirate conventions for the pirate book. It's easier for me because they don't have very many conventions for Vic stuff, unfortunately. But you got to put the work into it after you publish it. It doesn't just end right there. You have to go to these book signings and you have to be out there pushing, and you're basically promoting yourself.
Right. Are there services that you could enlist that would say, hey, we're going to find you for 2024 calendar year, we're going to get you 2 book signing conventions a month. Is that something that exists?
Yeah, there's people that will market your book for you, but it'll cost you.
Or like a
Right.
percentage?
There's
Yeah.
a cost to
No,
it.
they
It's
usually
an
want
upfront.
money up front.
Right, it's an upfront
Okay.
fee for that.
What's like the most amount of books you've sold at a signing?
Oh, my successful. So I do anywhere from 6 conventions a year, starting in about March to October, November-ish. October obviously is a really big time for me. But my big event was back in August at the Pirates of the Pacific Festival in Brookings, Oregon. Went all the way down there, met a lot of cool folks, really neat people, and I did over 1,000 in sales
Nice.
at that event. That was one of my better events I've been to.
It must have like the similar feeling to like what a rock star gets when he's up on the stage. when you've got a line of people wanting your book, wanting your signature, do you have to like keep the ego at bay a little bit?
Oh, it's just cool talking to these people.
Yeah, it is.
It really
but
is.
my experience was a little different. For that first book, there was an article in the Yakima Herald about it. And the next day at Amazon, there were 241 books ordered
Wow.
in one day. So.
Wow.
And of course, I didn't. That
How
was
much
all
were the
done
books?
Electronically, you know.
And how much are they? Were they
$19.95 for the paperback, and then $9.95 for the ebook.
And you only brought me $20?
We're going to watch and see how things do after this show.
Oh boy. No, that's really that must have felt really cool.
Yeah.
Were you like, is this an accident?
Yeah, it was something.
Dude,
What'd your wife think?
She thought it was good too.
That's cool. So now are you guys consistently selling books now? Like do you get, I mean, aside from your going out and finding new places to venues, do you guys get some sort of like repeat business or referral business?
Yeah, I've been busy doing a lot of research and getting things set up for my next book, and talking to people and sending letters and waiting for public disclosure requests to come back and that type of thing. And I've spent more time probably doing that, working on the next book, than I have as far as marketing is concerned. But at Amazon, there's advertising that goes on, and they automatically sell books. I think, near the end of February, I maybe sold 25 books online.
That's about right.
So.
Yeah, I'd say about the same for me too. I think marketing is kind of like what I was saying earlier. When you publish your book, it doesn't just end there. You're always continually marketing, and you're going to events and signings and everything like that. So
Finding new ways. I think that's
Right.
that's kind of what we were talking about with you guys is doing some kind of like reoccurring podcast. We probably should consider setting up like a separate Facebook group just for this, for you guys. You each have your own or joined one, because I think creating, when you start to create a follower base of people that are interested in your stories and what's coming out, like you said, you're in the process of doing some research for a new book. That's promotions now where people can say, hey, how do I get usually there's discounts on pre-sales, right? Is that how they do that?
Yeah, I do have a Facebook account too, and I've got a number of friends on it, and it's been helpful as far as research.
Oh,
is concerned.
definitely. Yeah, social media, TikTok, and all that stuff is it's big. It's big for self-publishers.
Yeah. So I think, the way the world's going is people have to be so in tune with social media, because that's where everybody's eyeballs are. They're on TikToks, YouTubes, Instagrams, and if you're out there talking, I think it's cool when people get to know who the people are. Instead of just seeing the books and the stories, they get to hear about, like, maybe next time we have you guys here, you both can pick a book or maybe a story in your book, and we'll kind of dive into where your mind was. Because with your stuff, I've met other people that are into writing kind of stories from the mind, and it's, for a lot of people, it's escapes from their ex-addicts, and this is how they got out of whatever spot they were in, or abuse from a young age, mental abuse, or they just have an amazing imagination. It's what they kind of focused on to not see how fucked up the world really is. So it'd be cool to hear some of your thoughts in that. And I think the more vulnerable people are, the more people are like, man, I can relate to that. I want to read that guy's book. Your stuff, I think it has such cool fucking history tied to it that it's almost like going back in time. Like we were talking about it when we walked out of here the other day, when we left. We're talking about the trees and the rocks, that they were there well before us. They're going to be there long after us. And imagine if those trees could tell stories. It's like you get to, this is embedded into history. Long after Vic pieces off into whatever afterworld this is, your stuff is still here, where people get to still share your life.
I used to walk through this building when I was in my 20s as a downtown foot patrolman.
That's crazy.
That's what's cool about Vic's stuff too, is that it's that history, and that's why I tell you, Vic, like my stuff, it feels mindless. Like all that I do is I put together an antagonist, a protagonist, I come up with a plot, and I run with it. Like the most kind of research and the most kind of digging around I do, I look on the internet and I see, what the hell is a hide behind? Let me figure out what kind of monster that is. And I'm like, oh, that would be awesome for like a fire tower, watchtower, horror story, isolation thing. That's the extent of my research.
So yeah, is there anything else you guys want to? And anybody that's watching this right now, if you have a question for Vic or Derek, leave them in the comments, and then we'll bring them up on the next episode. Because I think that helps kind of steer the episodes. Is when you start getting viewer responses, the engagement. That's what you're doing this for. You want to know what your people want.
Right.
Yeah, I can tell them where the tunnel entrances are.
Not today. We gotta wait to save that for next time.
Okay.
I can tell you what monsters are in there right now.
There you go.
All right, guys. All of their links to where you can purchase their books, follow them on Facebook, ask them questions, is in the description of this video. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share my content as well. Gentlemen, anything else that we forgot about that you want to mention?
No?
No, nope. That's not your newest book.
Here, I'll hold up this one. You hold up the other one.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, guys. I'm Dan Wise.
This one?
Wise Media Studios.
There you go.
People up and people, communities time, one day at a time. See you next week. Peace.